yeah. Put a nigga back to the record, baby, and give me this right now.
What's going on, everybody? It is Legendary LaShawn here, and we are back with another Legendary discussion. And today we're going to be discussing, fighting game bosses, right? And the kind of like the impact that they have on a fighting game. Is it necessary to have a hard fighting game boss, and what it really adds to the game? And so the reason why this came up is because I was watching this video that I'll probably link in the description from Maximilian Dude talking about Omega Rugal from the recent King of Fighters game, and about, like, you know, how he's not really that hard, and about why, even though SNK marketed him as like this impossible to beat boss, that you're going to have to pay attention to every single pixel, you're going to have to be on your A game, you're going to have to strategize with other people to be able to beat him, he was actually relatively easy. And SNK did it before, where in, like, you know, in CVS and the other King of Fighters game, he was like a crazy hard boss to beat. But in this game, they just didn't do that, and that was their choice. And so Max was saying that most likely the reason why is to kind of appeal to that casual audience, to have them be able to feel like, oh, I can overcome this. Which I understand, but I heavily disagree with. And the reason why is because even if you are a fighting game developer, that logic doesn't add up because of what has been seen from the past. And also, even what you see from fighting games now as far as, like, you know, challenging bosses. So, like, even if you look at, let's take, let's go back to Max, right? Max has a series called Boss Rage, where he fights the hardest version of the fighting game boss. And I remember he was doing Oni from Street Fighter 4. Ultra Street Fighter 4. And, you know, he was having a really hard time, and it had a crazy amount of requirements. I think you had to get like 10 super, no, like, I think like 10 first attacks, 10 super finishes, 2 perfects, and like all this other stuff. And you can't lose a round. That was the thing. You could not lose a round, which made it harder because, of course, it's the CPU on its hardest mode, and it's going to be trying to input read you, right? But eventually he did it. And of course, because of Max being such a wonderful, colorful, and entertaining person to watch, he made this boss run very, very entertaining, right? And so, very clearly, hard fighting game bosses have a very good entertainment value. Not just for, like, YouTube videos and stuff like that, but also even for casual people, because a lot of times, most casual people, when they play fighting games, it's going to be with their friends, right? They're not just going to be only hopping online to just face people that are better than them. They're going to be playing with their friends, right? And a lot of times fighting game bosses help to add that sense of a local community of, yo, we're all going to get together and we're all going to try our best to beat this boss, right? I know for me and my guys, for us, it was Night Terror. Night Terror was so perfectly named because that's what he did to us. He literally gave us nightmares in our sleep about what he did to us. So if you don't know and if you've never seen it, Night Terror is kind of like, I guess, is he a secret boss? I guess he's kind of like a secret boss from Soul Calibur 3. So in Soul Calibur 3, it was kind of like this choose your own adventure mode. It wasn't really like an arcade thing. And so you had to choose a very specific path to get to Night Terror in the first place. But once we finally did, yo, and once we just found it by chance. And I remember because Nightmare is my favorite Soul Calibur character. I saw him, and me and my homie saw him, and we were just so enamored with how he looked. His design, his moveset, it was crazy. But when we started playing, we definitely felt the terror. we felt that joint 110%. So he had setups that led into unblockables, that led into you losing 35% of your life, right? And then I remember one of the times I was just like, okay, I'm just going to chill here for a minute to see what he does. And of course, I should have known. I should have known, with Soul Calibur and Tekken share in the same universe, this dude Night Terror hops up into the sky And this dude does like this freaking Kazuya like Omega Beam thing where it's not just one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 beams that all hit you that do like 50% of your health. Oh my god, and it was so bad. Like, yo, one of my homies threw my controller. Like, he threw the GameCube. He threw the controller because he was so mad, because he was like, yo, we're going to beat this dude. We're not going to stop until we beat him. And we were determined to do it, right? And those type of moments really add to the fun factor of a fighting game. Even if you think about simple things. Even if you think about even the older games, like, you know, even in Alpha 3, with like, you know, Bison, even Street Fighter 1, right? Sagat. Even Street Fighter, the first game, Sagat. If you got the Anniversary Collection, a lot of people had a hard time with that. A lot of people had a little bit of a difficulty trying to do that because of it trying to be arcade perfect. The inputs were so hard to actually get Hadokens and Shoryukens and stuff like that. A lot of people just tried to kind of like mash it out, and it worked for the most part, right? But a lot of these difficult situations, it adds to the enjoyment. And even if you think of other games outside of fighting games, if you think about like something like poker, right? If poker was just people folding whenever they thought that somebody was bluffing, or if they thought they had a bad hand, would that be an enjoyable experience? No. It's only when there's $1 million, or $500,000 on a line, do things really get entertaining? Does it really get high stakes? The only time that we really get that maximum kind of like enjoyment and entertaining factor is when we know there's high stakes. Even if you look at something like, you know, a fighting movie, right? Like Rocky. Take Rocky for example. If Rocky kept on being this person that couldn't get touched and couldn't get hit, would the story be entertaining? No, not at all. But it's because of the fact that he's an underdog, that nobody thinks that there's not a chance that he's going to beat Apollo Creed. And then he actually, first of all, in the first movie, he lost. And then in the second one, I think it was only by decision.
You win.
So basically what I'm trying to say is that I would hope that, you know, I would hope that kind of, it's not the end of like hard fighting game bosses. I would hope that it's, you know, hopefully just a one-off, because I don't think that it'll be something where they're totally going to get rid of hard bosses, right? Because even in Guilty Gear Strive, they had the hardest mode Nagoriyuki, where recently, what was it, Panda Fighting Games had their players try to beat the hardest mode Nagoriyuki, and I think Justin was the only one that went all the way through and succeeded, and that's because he used what is her name, May, with all those stupid behind dolphins. But all the other people, like I think Punks tried to use Saul, and that didn't work. And then I think the other two, no, the other guy, he made it but got beat, and then the other one, he didn't even make it to Nagoriyuki. He didn't even make it to the hardest version of him. Because if you beat him once, then he gets another mode where he just goes crazy and he's completely in that berserker mode. And they were having a really hard time. And it's interesting because in the video, they showed like the stressfulness of it. They showed them having a really hard time trying to figure out what he's doing, trying to figure out the options and stuff like that. But a lot of times, it adds interest. And it, if anything else, in my opinion, I think that it's really important to have challenging, like not, you don't have to have them crazy hard like how Rugal was before, right? But you need to have a hard boss. You need to have a hard fighting game boss. The reason why is because the fighting game boss, and essentially the things that go on in arcade mode, is supposed to be to teach you the basics of how the game works in different situations, right? That's why you don't just fight one character, you go around and fight multiple, right? So if you choose Ryu, you know, you're fighting Dhalsim, you're fighting a zoner. How do you deal with a zoner? How do I deal with these limbs coming all the way across the screen? If you're fighting Zangief, how do I deal with the fact that he can grab me through a fireball? How do I deal with the fact that he has armor? How do I deal with the fact that he has this, like, you know, running bear grab thing, right? How do you deal with all these situations? The final fighting game boss is supposed to be a culmination of everything that you've learned. And the game to me that did that the best was Street Fighter Third Strike with Gil. Gil is a type of fighting game boss that, for me, I had a hard time beating Gil, and it was so difficult to do. And in Third Strike, I was playing Dudley, and it was so difficult to do, and it took me a while. And the reason why is because I struggled so much with parrying, because I typically am more of, I guess, a defensive player. So for me, the idea of having to press forward at the exact moment that an attack is about to hit me is, like, in my mind, too much of a risk, because, like, okay, if I don't get it exactly right, then that means that I'm eating a full combo. So I really struggle with that. But in order for me to actually beat Gil and I'm talking about on a hardest mode, I had to learn how to parry and how to just, like, have faith in it. Have faith that, all right, listen, the only way I'm going to beat him is if I parry some of these fireballs. I need to parry this cryo and, pyrokinesis and all this stuff. And it added a whole lot of fun. So that way, when I went online and I played Third Strike, that I was able to at least parry some fireballs. I was able to parry some lows. I never got to the point where I could parry a whole entire super. But I got to the point where I was proficient enough to get some in there to where now I could punish you for doing a low, I can punish you for trying to do an overhead or whatever else, and that made me a better fighting game player. So I think that players really need that. But tell me what you guys think. Tell me if you enjoyed the video. Tell me what you want to see me make a video about next. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.